Hello, welcome back to the channel. So Amphoreus has definitely been like the most story we have gotten to date. And for the most part, I do think it's good and I have enjoyed it. I mean, there definitely are some things that I would change or some parts I didn't like as much as some other parts, and also for clarity, I haven't fully finished all the story, like I haven't done the 3.3 story yet. But like Amphoreus as a whole, like has made me realize kind of how important story is for the game, not just in terms of like us getting more of it, but also for like the characters and the content as a whole in the game. And I think that it has been both a good and a bad thing for the game at the same time. Let's start off with like the characters. For a while we have only really been getting like 5-star characters. Like the last 4-star we got was in 2.5, which is insane. And while yes, I do think part of the reason is because of money, like any company does, I don't agree that that is the only reason. Because I will see people say that that's like the only reason there is, but I just don't think that that's true. I do think that one of the main reasons is because the devs want every character to feel important, which is why every character for a while has been like important to the story in some way, which I do think is good since it makes them feel like they actually exist in the world and have some sort of purpose, which is part of the reason why I think all of the Amphoreus characters have been 5 stars, since they are meant to be these like big like god-like important figures. So the devs made them all 5 stars, so they were like more big and exciting. Also, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that people actually want 4 stars, because like whenever we do get a 4-star, people complain that they are a 4-star. So like there is no winning either way. Like I saw so many people complaining with like Gallagher and with Moe's that they were 4 stars. So like you literally can't win. Now, do I necessarily agree with this approach of just making everyone a 4-star? Not really, since I think that you can still make 4 stars exciting and important. I mean, there's literally like a joke in the community to not trust 4 stars because they're almost always like super important to the story. I mean, got like Tingyun and Misha as good examples of this. They can make good 4-star characters, they're just not doing it. Even just besides the characters, another thing is that like basically all of the content we are getting is connected to the story in some way. I mean, basically all of the Divergent Universe stuff we've been getting is centered around Amphoreus, with like the new boon system and like all the different buffs that you can get, and like the little bits of story you get as well. Most of the events that we get come like after you beat the story, unless you use the skip button, and even then, a lot of the characters from that appear in those events. Like, it does feel like Hoya want the story to be like the main thing for the game, which I think like is both a good and a bad thing at the same time. Like, I do think it's good because the longer time of the story allows a lot more of the characters to actually shine, and allows them to actually develop a lot more naturally, since I think one problem with Pentaconi is that it felt like some of the characters didn't really do as much as other ones. Since like, I do think Amphoreus really needed to be longer, or else there's just no way you would be able to flesh out like this many characters in like 3 patches like before. Now, do I think that it's a bit too long? Yeah, definitely, especially since Hoyo are just not good at beginnings. Like, they never have, and probably never will be. That's just always been their weakness. I mean, even in something like Belobog, that the part that most people talk about is the Cocolia fight, which is like the ending. Now, I think that the real like bad part of like how much story we've been getting is that I feel like it's kind of taking away from the other content. I mean, I feel like Star Isle has always kind of been like the weakest when it comes to like events, but I feel like it's gotten like even worse in Amphoreus. Like, only having 1 event for each phase of this patch is insane. Now, to be fair, they could also be putting most of their like event effort into a Fate event, but at the same time, like, I don't really know if I believe that. And it does feel like they're putting most of their focus into like the story and like the world, because doing stuff for the story isn't just doing like the character animation stuff, and it's not just cutscenes. It's also designing all of the areas, designing all of the the dialogue, that actually writing all of the story, getting all of the voice work and stuff. It's like, it's more than just like cutscene stuff that goes into the story. So it does feel like they're putting most of their focus into that and less into like doing actual content. I mean, the last new game mode we got was Apocalyptic Shadow back in 2.3. And the rest of it has just been like simulated universe stuff, which I have enjoyed those modes for the most part, but it just kind of feel like more of the same after a while, and I do think the game really needs like something new in terms of gameplay. Because I feel like, at least in my opinion, I do think it has been improving slowly in terms of like story. It's just the gameplay has just been kind of stagnating. I do think that now the reason that people play this game for the most part is mainly just for the story, which I think is a fine reason. I mean, that's also one of the main reasons why I play the game. But like the two big parts of the game are story and combat. And I feel like the bigger emphasis on story has made combat kind of like get pushed a bit to the wayside. And that's not to say that like the characters we've gotten haven't been cool. I have liked the characters we've gotten for the most part, even if we did have the whole like casters thing. Now, I don't think that's the only reason the combat has like suffered. I do think they're like, you know, power creep and just a lot of the older characters having outdated designs and then like really needing like buffs and stuff doesn't really help with that either. And also MOC just kind of being awful. Also, I just really feel like the patches where we get the best story have the least content. Like 4.1 had like barely anything and had like pretty great story. And 3.3, at least from what I've heard, is probably like the best so far and has like basically almost like no content outside of that. And it's like, I do think that story is very important for the game. And like when people aren't enjoying the story, like you can really feel it because people are way more pissed off, like even more than when the combat isn't enjoyable. And story is like one of the biggest reasons that people do pull for characters. I mean, look at someone like Aventurine. I feel like most people weren't really that excited for him before he actually came out. Then once the 2.1 story came out, he's basically like a fan favorite character. And as someone who does enjoy the story, probably more than most people do, I don't want them to like stop doing the story like they are now. Obviously, you know, I do want them to like improve it. I just mean that I just think that they need to get better at like spreading out their content instead of just funneling it all into like one side or the other. And that isn't to say we haven't gotten like anything good from like the gameplay stuff in terms of like story, because I do actually like most of the bosses we have gotten from the story, at least recently. Now, I haven't fought the 3.3 boss. I don't even know what his name is, but I do like Nikador and Pollux. I feel like they're both like interesting to go against, even if they are pretty strong, which I don't really think is necessarily a problem. I just think that's more of a problem with MOC. And I don't really like the Flame Raver as much. I do kind of have some problems with the boss design, but I don't dislike it as much as I used to. And that, like I said, I feel like most of the problems with those fights mainly come from MOC and like the HP scaling and stuff, rather than the actual designs of the boss fights themselves. At the end of the day, like, you know, story is a very important part of the game. And well, yeah, improvements could definitely be made, like, you know, having less like black screens, doing better in terms of like camera angles and stuff. I think that like the Amphoreus story, at least in my opinion, has been good for the most part. I think the story is just influencing the rest of the game a bit too much, from like the content to like the actual characters. Like, I think that Hyacinth and Tribby could have been 4 stars and been fine, even with like the same kit. Like, you just because a character is a 4-star doesn't mean that you have to give them a less strong or interesting kit. Like, you can still make characters have cool kits or like be really strong even if they are 4 stars. And it's like, we know they can make good 4 stars since we got like, you know, Gallagher, Hunt, March, you know, Mose, all good characters. So it's like, we know that they can do it. They just aren't. And I feel like them like being way more important in the story is them being like, oh, we gotta make them 5 stars so that people will want them. It's like, we don't need to do that. I'm going on a rant. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.